This is Nicole Sauce from the Holler Homestead giving you a woman's take on the walk towards independence because we're living free in Tennessee. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee. Today is Monday, April 3rd. How did we get to April 3rd already? Anyway, it is Monday, April 3rd, 2017, and this is episode 30. That's right, 30 of this podcast. And gosh, last week we were playing around a little bit. I don't know if you noticed, but we had a little pre-segment and outro segment of me asking Mike, "Hey Mike, how's it going?" And he just said, "I'm over it." I thought I'd tell you a little bit. We were just kind of playing, and it was because he had been driving for like 10 hours by the time we recorded that little segment, and it was because we had already recorded the podcast one time, and there was a technical failure, and we had to record the whole blessed thing again. So I launched into the same thing again, and he said that, and then I thought it was kind of funny. I probably should have left the background laughing in on that one because you know how funny everything is, but it's when you've been on the road for 10 or 12 or 14 hours. Yeah, that's kind of where we were at that point. So I hope you enjoyed the recap of our homesteading workshop last week. We've gotten lots and lots of feedback on that episode. A lot of it from folks who wanted to go to the workshop and couldn't. And they've been hearing it from afar from Jack on his podcast about what it's like and from other people who have been there, but they've never quite been able to go. I mean, sometimes, of course, a workshop like that will be scheduled on your daughter's wedding, or maybe it's too far to drive. There are lots of reasons why a person might not go to a homesteading workshop in Dallas, although I'll tell you what, if I get the chance to go to that one again, I totally will, because I learned so much while I was there. But it did get me to thinking about living free in Tennessee and homesteading skills and workshops. And a lot of you don't know it, but we do an annual event here for some of our friends out at what we call the Liberty Farm in September or October. And I thought, why not do a workshop here with people from Tennessee who can kind of share best practices about what they've learned about our area. One of the things about permaculture and about farming and homesteading that I've noticed is it's very different depending on your climate, right? And I mean, I moved here from Oregon. My first growing season sucked. I put tomatoes in too late. Actually, those did kind of okay. I tried lettuce in June. You do not grow lettuce here in June unless you are under shade and figuring out how to cool those puppies down. And I grew varieties of plants because I was under the understanding that here's what one does in your garden, right? You find the sunniest spot in your yard, and you wait all year to be able to put a plant in that sunny spot, and it gets beat on by the sun day in and day out, and it does really well in Oregon because it's not hot in Oregon. Here, if you do that with typical garden plants, they get stressed out. They want like 4 to 6 hours of sun a day here. So totally different mentality. And I thought, well, okay, maybe we'll do something here in September. So if you guys think that's a good idea, let me know. I can handle between 20 and 30 people on the homestead, and it could be a really fun opportunity to have, maybe 3 sessions a day and spend some time around the campfire talking about things that we're running into challenges-wise. And I think what would make it good is if some of you listening who have something to share, tell me an idea or what you'd like to do. Anyway, today we are going to talk about wild forage nutrition in the spring. I'll also highlight a local event that's coming up. We're going to talk a bit about observing your local forest and what you can learn from that, especially at this time of year. And then we'll do our usual segments. But first, if you want to drop me a note, question, or comment, you can email it to me at nicolesauce@gmail.com. Or you can leave a comment over at livingfreeintennessee.com. Now, I know leaving a comment over there can be a little challenging. Right now, I have it fairly locked down where you have to log in and get approved, and then once you've been approved, you can comment more often without my approval. That's because we've been getting hit with comment spam, and I have not deployed the ASCII-Met comment spam filter, which I will totally do right after the next newspaper comes out. It's something I knew I needed to do. I started getting hit with spam. I started asking people to comment, and I'm pretty sure that some of you have gone over there and thrown up your hands in frustration because you do have to log in. So my apologies for that, but if you're really persistent, you'll find I answer your comments right away. We have one over there from a friend of mine who did that this week. Oh, anyway, I got a comment last week and did answer it right away. Anyway, there is also a deal from our friends over at Cider Hollow who they are selling their spring plants, and they're almost sold out, but they want to finish getting rid of the stock right now. So they've got comfrey and bare root fruit trees ready to go. And by the way, it's time to get those in the ground right now. So I got an email from David, who owns the farm. And if you go over to ciderhollow.com and click on their shopping cart area, you'll find the comfrey, but you will not see the bare root trees. So I'm afraid you will have to click on the contact form and send him an email if you want to get those trees. However, he gave me a coupon code in case you are buying the comfrey. So if you use the coupon code and, add some comfrey to your cart, just enter in LFITN5. That's Living Free in Tennessee 5, by the way. And he'll hook you up. I know he has recommended on the bare root trees that you figure out a good way to pick them up. He's near Savannah, Tennessee. I think he works near Memphis. I'm not sure. So there are a couple different places you might meet him to pick things up. And he is happy to ship the stuff to you. He was saying, it might be cheaper if people catch me along my way somewhere else. But that's a 5% discount. He's about sold out, and it's a good time of year to get your hands on bare root trees and on comfrey. Next up, we have Eating Seasonally and Tales from the Prepper Pantry. And this is where we share what we are eating as it comes to us and talk about ways to use what we store. So it will be no surprise to y'all to hear that we are eating mustard, wild mustard, watercress, and dandelion roots. Dandelion roots I'm not really eating. I'm making tea out of them. But the ground is perfect for harvesting those right now. And I don't know what your lawn looks like. I actually have a couple flowers up, so it's easy to tell where they are. Something that popped out this week for us, though, is hairy vetch. Now, hairy vetch is something that there's a little bit of debate about whether it's edible or not. I eat it. I eat the tender tips of the plant. It's a vine, and it's a legume, so it's what's called a nitrogen fixer in your garden. And when it comes out, it vines out and has these purple flowers. The variety that grows on my property does anyway. And it's pretty tasty. It tastes a little bit like sugar snap peas, so really good on a salad. The thing about hairy vetch is if you let it get really big and then harvest it, it tastes hairy and vetchy, like the name. But if you get it young and tender, then it's tasty. It's, don't let the name fool you. Now, some of the debate about if it's edible or not. People say don't eat too much of it because it could have some buildups in there that aren't so good for you. Vetch, just like traditional vetch, has a different edibility profile. And what I think is really going on there is people are mistaking hairy vetch with vetch. Either way, I'm not sure why you would eat buckets full of hairy vetch anyway. That's a lot of, maybe if you were starving, but it's better complementing a salad with some watercress, some wild mustard, some dandelion greens, anything you want to put in there. You might even have spinach coming out of your garden right now. That would make a pretty tasty salad right there. Next up, from the pantry, this is what's going on with our pantry at this point. The root cellar, I call my root cellar and my pantry kind of the same thing because they're in kind of the same place. But the garlic and onions are gone. They are gone. They are either dried and taken care of. There's a few fresh ones left in my kitchen, and I'm waiting eagerly for the garlic to come to us in May, which is about when it usually gets ripe around here, May and June. And so now Mark wanted to make tacos last week, and he said, are we out of onions? And I said yes. And so he got to go out to the yard and harvest wild garlic greens, like the chive-looking things that grow in your yard. And then also we have chosen a couple of our Egyptian walking onion plants to harvest as green onions. And we're letting some of them get tall and develop bulbs that I can plant and then go from there. So that's how we're getting the onion flavor. If I would have been smarter, I might have cut up some onions in the fall and dried them and had dried onions, but I didn't do that. So that's how we're getting through. And honestly, if I really, 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 really want an onion, I will go to the store and buy one. But this is all about figuring out how to eat what we grow here. And some of the things that you don't realize will be a challenge in this situations are things like what happens when I'm out of onions in the spring, right? We also have watercress, but it's almost done for the season, and we do have another cold snap coming, so that might prolong its longevity, but when it gets really hot, watercress tends to turn into this weird woody thing and then die back until it cools down a bit. So I'm hoping we'll get a bit of a reset in the watercress area. The creek is nice and cool. It's kind of shady, so that gives me hope. But the other thing that I've noticed is just about to hit us. It's hitting us now. It'll probably come into its own in about 2 weeks. The season of tea. The season of tea is almost here. What is the season of tea? The season of tea is when I can go out into my yard and wander around and harvest leaves off things while the butterflies are circling around my head and put them in a boiling pot of water and make tea. I love this season. It sounds as good as it is. And it's also when I start drying those things so that I have them all year round. So the bee balm is about 4 inches tall. I could already harvest leaves off that, but I'll let it get a little taller. Blackberry leaves are coming out. Those are fantastic in tea. And the mint is starting to come in the creek. So we've got bee balm, blackberry leaves, and mint coming on. And other tea generating things I'm sure will come on. In fact, stinging nettle makes a really good tea. So that's another entrant into our tea growing activities here. And the best thing about the tea growing activities is they take no effort from me. The one thing I want to do is get my hands on some lemon balm so that it's next to the bee balm, and that also is, well, really good in tea. Next up, we have getting the gardens ready. This is where we share what we're doing to get our food growing operation up and running, and I'm pleased to report that I came back from Dallas, and the greenhouse tomatoes are growing strongly. They will be for sale soon. I will water the greenhouse right after this podcast. Anyway, they're looking good. They're about 4 inches tall now and looking healthy. The chickens that we raise for eggs here got into the flippin' garden. Crap. You know what that means? It means they went to the areas where I had the wood chips pulled back and had beets and other things coming up, and they did what chickens do. They ate what was yummy, and they scratched around, and they pretty much have made it so once again I'm going to be buying my beets from a fellow gardener, which is kind of a bummer. And the lettuce made it through, though, so it looks like we'll still have lettuce, and I apparently need to put... One of my chickens figured out she could fly over the fence. This is a new development. It's been 10 years. They've never really figured out that they even want on the other side of that fence. But I have this one Aracuna who's figured out she can just fly over, and she's the one who's wreaking havoc. The good news is my peas are up and she didn't find them, and the potatoes are coming up through the ground. So we are also wood chipping the walkways, because if I don't do that soon, I'm going to put cardboard down this year and wood chips on top. Then I'm probably going to have the usual weed jungle by August. Garden economics project update this week. I have spent no additional money, so we're doing pretty well. I did, as I mentioned, I'm going to end up having to spend money on beets unless I get a second set of seeds out that do well. And we are selling watercress online again this week. It's because of the way the weather went, it's a good time to harvest the watercress and put it in your creek. It's still going to be cool enough the next couple weeks for it to take hold. So we've reopened sales at livingfreeintennessee.com for watercress, and we'll see if a few more customers don't pop up. I did also reach out to a woman who has watercress for sale on the other side of Nashville. If you're interested in watercress and you're west of Nashville, she is probably going to open up hers again too, and I'll turn that on the website as well. I'm east of Nashville, so if you're east of Nashville, the thing about watercress is I can't mail it without spending a lot of money to keep it from being damaged. So it's a local pickup only. I go to Cookeville, I go to Lebanon, I go to Smithville. We just have to arrange a good time, and I will hand you lovely plants. And now it is time to move on to the main topic of today's show, wild forage nutrition in the spring. When I thought about doing this topic, a lot of people have told me they're interested in sort of the wild foods and how we're making them. And I thought, well, let's step back and talk about why we're even eating all the wild foods besides the fact that it's fun and I like plants, right? So it all goes back about 15 years for me when I went on a trip to Germany for a week, and I came back feeling fantastic. And I had lost two sizes, pant sizes. And anybody who's seen me knows I could stand to use 2 pant sizes. So it was 1 week, and everybody always says, oh, it's because in Europe you walk a lot. No, that wasn't it. I was doing some walking, not tons of walking. I was using mass transit. I was just hanging out in Stuttgart, going to the markets, buying food, cooking food, eating food, hanging out with friends, having a good time, drinking too much wine, as usual, having some beer, all the things you're not supposed to do. I ate a lot of food there. In fact, I ate a lot of bread. I ate a lot of dairy. I ate a piece of cake every single day, and I came back 2 sizes skinnier, feeling great. And then I sat down and had my first American meal, and I gained a size back, and I felt terrible. And I realized what was going on. It was the food. The food in Europe is better than the food here. And I thought, well, what in the world? Like, that's terrible. That means if I ever want to just be healthy, I'm going to have to move to another country, right? Well, no. I started looking into this a little bit more. I talked to other friends who had lived in other countries, and they had noticed the same thing. They said, yeah, I get back to the U.S., and I get bloated and gassy, and I don't feel very well, and it's food I cook that I get at the grocery store. Guys, there's something very wrong with our food, even our good food. From that day forward, I became obsessive about organic, grass-fed stuff, and I was never quite as feeling good as I did in Germany that time. Even in Tennessee, even growing my own food, until I started eating wild plants. This is messed up. There is no reason that our food system should make people feel bad, but I know it makes me feel bad. And so I started looking into it a little bit deeper, and I noticed that there are some, I'm not going to blame it on GMO, corn, blah, 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 wheat, blah, blah. That might be true. I don't know. But I do know that when you grow a lot of food in water without a lot of nutrients, there's no way that the vitamins are getting up in there. And our food pulls vitamins out of the earth, and we need vitamins to survive, for example. I mean, do you know why we even have iodized salt? We have iodized salt because we need iodine in our diet. And you get iodine from seaweed and other leafy greeny things, and it's not unusual all over the world for people to have thyroid issues, learning and mental disabilities, because they're not getting enough iodine. That's why they added iodine to our salt. Not having enough iodine makes us stupid. That's not good. In fact, if you're somebody who has moved to the Himalayan salts and it doesn't have iodine in it, think about that. Where are you getting your iodine? Make sure you're getting it, because you might be making yourself stupid. Well, okay, same goes for magnesium. I was going through some muscular problems a couple years back, and they started making me take this supplement of magnesium, and it made me feel better. Well, guess what happens when you don't have enough magnesium? You have muscular problems, you have impaired memory, and you have learning problems. I mean, it can turn into other things that are much worse than that, but the minute I started taking magnesium, I started feeling better. It didn't help with every single thing. I still had some fitness issues, but wow. Let's think about folic acid. If you've been pregnant, you know what they want you to do, right, ladies? They want you to eat folic acid, and that's because we're not getting it from our leafy greens. Even if we're buying the leafy greens in the store and eating them, we're not getting enough folic acid. Well, how did we even survive as a species 100 years ago if there aren't vitamins in our food? I think the answer is, and this is just my opinion, I think the answer is there were more vitamins in our food when we weren't trying to grow it from water or grow it in the same piece of earth that we were not rejuvenating as we went, right? Farming is a cycle. You grow the food, you eat it, the surplus goes back to the soil, rots into the soil, breaks down the elements in the soil, comes back up into the food. Like, it's a cycle. If you do it right, if you maintain the fertility of your soil, your plants do really well. And if you don't, they don't, and you have to add fertilizer and add all this other stuff. So again, the science on this is really conflicting. I started learning about the science on this 15 years ago, and I found scientists saying that all food grown in any way is exactly the same, and anybody who says organic versus grown in soil or grown in water versus grown in a forest versus grown somewhere else, it's all the same, and anybody who says anything different is full of crap. I've found scientists saying that GMOs are killing us because they are molecularly different. I have found them saying it's the glyphosate. That's a recent one. Scientists saying that conventional foods are more nutritious because they are frozen when they are fresh and don't lose the vitamin count like organic foods that have been shipped for 6 months to get to wherever they're going, or rather 6 weeks. I'm exaggerating. I have found scientists who guide us towards powdered synthetic vegetable proteins because it's perfectly balanced and that's all you need to do. It's all very confusing. And I think at the end of it, you just have to make your own choice for you. And I've made some choices for me. And some of the things, I do it through observing how my body reacts. So I read things, some things ring more true than others. You look at who's behind the scientists, who's funding the scientists, all of those things. But what I've found for me personally is freshly grown, harvested, and eaten food does not hurt me. That's right. Freshly grown, stuff that's harvested and eaten within a couple days. That stuff, I am less hungry when I eat that, so I eat less of it. It tastes better. That's a very compelling reason to do it. And I feel better when I do that. Well, that's not always possible in Tennessee. We get cold. It's, what's growing, blah, blah, blah. Things that are in season seem to be what my body needs. That was one that took me a while to figure out. When you have tons of cabbage and lettuce all at one time? Eat it up, friends. Look at what's in there. You're just coming off a long winter without a lot of fresh greens. Eat that stuff up when it's all coming on at one time. And nutritional and vitamin levels in wild forage foods are high. That's what I also started learning. Is if you look at the nutritional analysis, like the vitamin list, look at how many vitamins are in broccoli versus watercress. Watercress packs a punch, man. And that punch is important. I mean, we can all supplement with vitamins, and we should if we're low on something, but wow, these fresh wild foods are pretty good for us. I think about what it was like in my grandma's time, right? I mean, when they found a patch of ramps, they were going to eat that patch of ramps because they were hungry at that time of year. However, that was not all roses and sunshine, and people had major nutritional deficiencies. So I'm not saying that we need to go live like 100 years ago when we were dying of disease because there weren't any vaccines at all that worked. And I'm not going on the vaccine topic right now. But, polio was eradicated. People ate what they found. And some of these people starved. And some of these people didn't find a good balance, right? So I'm not saying we need to do that, but let's learn from that. My grandma actually grew up nutritionally balanced. And they were growing their food. And they would forage things when they found them. We think we're a hungry country. I read all about how we're starving. And I look around at all the fat people around me, of which I am one. And I think, if we're starving, why are we so fat? Now, that doesn't mean that nobody ever goes hungry, but if you compare the level of starvation in this country now versus 100 years ago, we've come a long, long way. There is a lot of food here. It's ridiculous how much food we have. We have so much food we could feed everybody here and other countries. It's amazing, and that's kind of cool, actually. At the same time, though, we kind of are starving because look at what we're eating. When I travel, I get super hungry. Like, I will eat a full meal in the morning, a full meal at lunch, and a full meal at night. And I will still be hungry when I go to bed. I get home and I have one really good salad. Not really that hungry anymore. It's like the food I'm getting when I'm out there. Is it emotional? I don't know. But the food just isn't satisfying. There's a lot of it, but it's not filling me up. It's not meeting the needs that my body has. So, what I've started doing when I travel is I pack in vitamins because I think that's the problem. I'm missing my vitamins from the food that I get when I'm here. Okay, well, this probably all sounds like I'm way off topic for foraging wild foods. So let's talk a little bit about the vitamin punch that wild foods pack. Now, again, I do the wild food thing because I love wild foods, but this is what spring wild food looks like in Tennessee. First, we've got chickweed. Chickweed tastes really good on your salad. It has an almost light, nutty flavor in the salad, so it's sort of refreshing. I was talking to somebody the other day. They told me that, if you let your chickens into the chickweed, you won't have any left, and that is kind of true. Like, the animals like it, and it is filled with beta-carotene. It has lots of vitamin B. It has lots of vitamin C. It is high in calcium, copper, magnesium, potassium, and iron and zinc. That's a lot of stuff for one plant. That's like, go get your iron-filled spinach that's growing in your garden and throw some chickweed on there, and you have a salad that tastes good, and you have a vitamin punch, and you're coming off a long, dark winter where you probably ate a lot of canned beans and potatoes and meat. And now look at what you have. You've got vitamin C, which is helping to strengthen your immune system. You've got vitamin B. You've got beta-carotenes, good for the vision. Pretty good. And calcium for those of us who need to build our bones. Okay, next up we have dead nettle. If you are iron deficient, and some of us ladies do become iron deficient, dead nettle's a very good plant for you. It's also packed with vitamins and fiber, so if you're having regularity issues, go make yourself up a dead nettle salad, right? Well, it's also got medicinal uses, and some of the medicinal uses are just to help with ladies at that time of the month. It helps regulate some of the cramping. It is said to regulate some of the cramping and some of the hemorrhaging that's happening at that time. It's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so dead nettle, not only does it taste good in a salad, but it's good for you, and it makes a great tea. So back to the tea idea, you go with the dead nettle, right? Okay, stinging nettle. Stinging nettle's kind of hard to harvest, so is it worth it? How about 35%? 1 cup of stinging nettle, 35% of your daily vitamin A, 42% of your calcium, 8% of your iron, 12% of your magnesium. These are all things that we are having to supplement because we don't get them a lot. I just walk out in the woods and I pick these things and I eat them, and they're great. I actually, about once a year, become enamored with some plant, and stinging nettle was my plant last year. And I was going through a horrible time nutritionally. Didn't even know it. Went to the doctor. They took my blood, and they're like, ooh, you got to get a lot more vitamin A. You got to get a lot more calcium. You need to jump, your magnesium's way down. And I'm sitting there with a cup of stinging nettle tea mixed with some bee balm because it tasted good. And I look it up, and I'm like, my body was telling me I needed to eat that plant. Interesting. Okay. Another plant we have in Tennessee and the nutrition it packs is watercress. Again, 22% of vitamin A, 24% vitamin C. Do you see a theme here? We do not need to get scurvy if we're foraging plants because we can get our vitamin C without buying the citrus. It's right there growing all around us. Interesting, huh? 106% of your vitamin K. Well, that's an interesting one. Vitamin K is something that's often ignored. I think that's why Circle K is such a popular cereal for weight loss. Vitamin K, watercress. I have used watercress after being exposed to a lot of toxic mold, and it makes me feel better. It's said to have liver cleansing properties, so that can be really good for you. Magnesium, kind of high. Lots of calcium, 40% calcium, 112 milligrams of potassium, which isn't very much, but we all need potassium, and that's something that sometimes lacks in our diet. So watercress packs a punch, and I think, the interesting thing about watercress, it's a quote-unquote wild plant. Well, it was brought here from England, let go in our streams, and became a wild plant. Why is it so healthy? Well, I mean, where it's growing here is the spring that comes up out of the ground, flows into a creek bed with slow-moving water, and that is where the watercress grows. So it's getting minerals from the water. The ground right there is not really messed with. It's pulling it all out of the ground naturally, just like it should. So anyway, I wanted to share with you the nutritional punch that can be packed with foraging wild food, because it's it's significant, and it can mean the difference between needing to do a lot of supplementing and not. And it's an extra motivator to get out there and learn some of these plants. Now, there's a lot of other plants that you can forage that also pack a nutritional punch. I will probably cover that from time to time. I didn't want to go on for 4,000 years on how much vitamin C is in everything. So what I wanted to say is, like, some of these numbers are really high, and it's interesting that at this time of year, the plants I'm getting are high in C, D, A, and B, because that's exactly what I need after the darkest part of the year. And it's interesting that the mushrooms were coming on, which are filled with vitamin D at the time of year when I was not getting sunshine. See how that works? Not everyone can forage these foods, but you know what? You can buy them. There's local farmers everywhere willing to go out and pick some pokeweed and sell it to you, right? And you can encourage it to grow in your yard. And you know what? If all else fails, you turn to supplements like I do when I travel. That keeps me from overeating so much. Although I do prefer a nice cup of stinging nettle tea over vitamins, I'm not above throwing some of those supplements in. And it kind of flows into what I wanted to talk about next, which is it's a good time of year to observe your local forest. Why would I bring that up now? Well, right now, spring is springing, and you can see what's growing in your area, and you can kind of gain some inspiration from it, right? You know, I've just talked about wild foraging. Well, something you can do rather than just forage the plants and eat them is figure out how to get them more convenient to you. And I've done this in my yard a bit. I started doing this a few years ago when I discovered that elderberry makes the best jam ever and a pretty darn good cough syrup as well. So I went out and looked at where it was growing and looked at what it looked like in the spring and saw one coming up in my vegetable garden in a place where I had this really persistent plant in there that I had been fighting, and it turned out to be an elderberry plant. And I thought, well, heck, if you want to grow there, whatever. And I let it grow. And what's happened since that time is elderberry is amazing, by the way. So it's growing out of this really rocky area where I put a square foot garden bed in on top of the rocks because there's just not much there. So like it's in the rocks, it's going under the bed and out the side. So I now have a square foot garden that is ringed by elderberries. And in fact, I just trimmed them last week, so they're not too tall. And they provide shade for my square foot garden where I then grow carrots and other things. So it's turned into its own little system of, this time of year it's not very shady because it hasn't leafed out yet, but I get lots and lots of elderberries from that thing. And what I've done from there is every time it puts up a runner, heck, I grab those things and I move them where I think it might like to be. What I've observed about elderberry is it likes partial shade, so it likes to grow on the edge, although the edge of my forest, you can get it to grow in direct sunlight, you just have to keep it well watered. But it's really liking that edge area. It likes partial shade. We have some growing right along the creek, and that actually ripens a little bit later because I think the roots are colder in the water. But I've learned that from just going out in my forest and observing. Other plants I've observed are how the mulberries like to grow. They like to grow near these invasive, I call it sumac. It's not really sumac. It's a sumac-looking tree that is invasive and doesn't really give you sumac berries that you can make tea out of. Oriental something or other. Anyway, this thing's a pain in the rear. But if you see one of those, you're probably also going to see a mulberry. We've got wild raspberries and blackberries coming up. If you cut down a bunch of trees near me right now, what will happen first is the wild raspberries will come on and then the wild blackberries. So what we've done with that information is look at where it's growing. Again, partial shade for those, and just encourage them to grow. Hairy vetch likes to come up in a clearing. Pokeweed comes up usually near a fence row, and my thought is that it's not getting trampled on as much there. And all of them tend to like the edges. So as I've observed things in the area, I've discovered these plants, where they like to grow, and then I'll just, especially with the wild raspberry, you can just kind of take a vine and bend it over into a pot and just keep that pot watered, and it'll root and you can move it. Or you can dig it up and move it. It's up to you. Some plants don't do as well with relocation, by the way, but those do. The other thing I've done is looked at where dead nettle likes to grow, and just thought about, okay, what's going on with the soil there? Why is the dead nettle doing so well? Well, it tends to do well in open areas with really rich soil. So as I've gotten my balance in the soil in my garden right, dead nettle's coming up, chickweed's coming up. I didn't even have to transplant it. I have tried to transplant some wild mustard greens in there, though. They haven't done so well yet. So I have not dialed something in just right. Where I see that growing most is along the side of the road, which makes me sad because that means it's getting road dust on it, which I don't really want to eat. I will occasionally harvest them from our road because we don't have that much traffic, but when I'm driving along the highway, that's not where I prefer to get it. Well, another place it grows is in the middle of what used to be a goat field over at my Liberty farm. So there's something about the soil there that it likes. And as I said, when I transplant them, they haven't always done so well. And as I've gotten my lawn to be more conducive to dead nettle growth, I've noticed that the few wild mustard greens in my lawn have not done as well. So I'm thinking it must like poorer soil. So, and that kind of leads me on to the other things you can observe, right? Is just when you're finding wild plants, where are they and how do I get them going in my yard? We also have in this area walnut trees, black walnut trees, hickory nuts, wild persimmons, wild cherries, crab apples, and pawpaws. Now, pawpaws have been something we've all talked about a lot in our area because they're so yummy and they're so bloody hard to grow. I hear these people in Ohio growing pawpaws like it's an easy thing to do, and I'm looking. I've killed so many pawpaw trees on my land, and I finally figured out what's going on. The pawpaws that grow well here, and this is again, I'm observing the forest. The pawpaws that grow well here are on the edge, so an edge from forest to pasture, north-facing slope. Those are the ones that get enough sun to get you fruit, but get enough shade to survive. They tend to do better on the west side of my Liberty farm than on the east side. Isn't that interesting? So they like the afternoon sun, but they like shade, but they don't like shade all the time. So this is why you go out. And then the other thing is you'll find where these things are, and you can transplant crab apples and pawpaws and hickory trees wherever you want to. Now, with those nut trees, be careful where you put them because they will inhibit the growth of other plants. But I think it's a really great way to learn what grows in your area so you can encourage similar things to grow in your area. Now that I know what pawpaws like, I can go get a cultivated type, and I know that if I put it in my south-facing slope in the middle of the yard with no shade, the darn thing's just going to go away, which is what happened to mine. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because it's still early enough to get into the forest and see what's going on before it gets too snaky and ticky for me. So I don't know, go out, take some time this week. There's going to be a couple sunny days and find interesting looking plants, learn about them. I choose one or two interesting looking ones every year and I try to figure out what they are. The interesting thing is 9 times out of 10, they are either medicinal or edible. Isn't that interesting? I thought it was like this weird spiritual thing going on with me and the plants. Like, I learned all about stinging nettle the year I needed it nutritionally. And that might be the case. But I'm actually starting to think most plants are either medicinal or edible. So there you go. I have gotten tricked by privet a couple times. That's a useless plant in my yard, even though my bees love it. Privet's awful. But it makes these really interesting looking purple berries in the wintertime. And you're like, I wonder if that's edible. And then you post it on, somewhere and you say, I wonder if that's edible. And somebody says, dude, that's privet. Don't eat it. Goats like it. So, yeah, privet and kudzu are the bane of my existence in this yard. It's not in this yard, but between my two properties. I need to get, like, a fleet of goats out on the other property and get rid of the kudzu because it's probably going to eat that whole hillside if we don't get up on it. And I curse the person who brought kudzu to that property. Anyway, that is the show content for the week. And next up, before we go, we have stories from the holler. I know you've all been waiting to hear how the holler was my first week back from Jack's, and we have been working on a facelift for the spring. The place is looking a little dilapidated, I got to admit, and Mark's mom is coming, and we all know what that means, right? That means we have to make it look nice for Betty. Actually, Betty has never been, she's, not the kind of mother-in-law who's been judgmental or mean, but I'd hate to have her come here and know that I hadn't painted my porch for a whole year when it needed it. So we're working on a couple projects like that, and some neighbors are helping out, and Betty might even be listening to this right now laughing to herself, but because I know she just wants to see us. But anyway, we're getting that going. The guest cabin has had a bed upgrade, so we're up to a queen-sized bed and getting that all installed. And here's what's really cool. I got back from the workshop, and the ducks are back in sync with what I want them to do. The thing about raising livestock is they never seem to do what you want them to do, and it's always at the worst time. And the ducks, in just keeping with that theory, decided that they would start running to the creek, as you all know, and running away. We don't want them in the creek because then the coyotes can find them and they become coyote snacks. So when I came back, Mark had them pretty well up and running. At night, when I want to put them away, I go out and I yell, duck, 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 and they come and they see me with a scoop of food in my hand. I feed them, they run into their pasture. I close the door on their pasture, which is also, it has a shelter for them. And if I let them out during the day, they do go down to the pond. They no longer go to the creek. I've kind of blocked their entrance to the creek, so it's not easy. They could go there if they want to, but it's not easy, so they hang out in the pond, and they've developed quite the nice rotation. They get up, they hang out on their pasture. I let them out about mid-morning. They go down to the pond, they have a swim. They come back up, they browse around the property, eating bugs and whatever they want to find. They go back to the creek. I mean, not the creek, the pond. They go for another swim. They come up at about 3 o'clock, 3:30. Wander around the property till about 5 or 6, whenever I decide I want to go out and put them away. I go out with a scoop of food, dump it in their bowl. They come running from wherever. They go in there and they're happy. It's working way better than it was before, actually. It was kind of annoying to have to do the all ducks go to bed thing every day. Now they seem to be more focusing on areas that are buggy on the property, which is good for us because of the pest control. I haven't seen a tick on my property except for the one that came over on my dog from somebody else's property yet this spring. So let's keep that trend going and hope that the ducks and chickens keep eating those. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about communities versus guilds. We've been going through Gaia's Garden. I'm going to do chapter 9 next week. And chapter 9 is talking about building your plant guilds in your garden, which will be cool. But I was reading about why they use guilds for something we manufacture versus plant communities for something that happens naturally in nature, like I'm talking about in the forest, right? And it got me to thinking about our own communities of humans and our own guilds. And something that's always bothered me is like the government tries to quote unquote build community by, building a school and saying everybody in this particular geographical area goes to that school, and see, we're building community. Or they do things where they try to force people into situations to interact with each other where it may not be the healthiest interaction, but they call it community. But they're really trying to build a guild because communities happen naturally and voluntarily. And I look at our own community. We have a pretty good community of farmers, homesteaders, people into permaculture, people into eating good food, and we help each other when we can in this area. It's all voluntary, and I would call that a true community, right? Well, we also have the government-imposed schools that are done by zip code, where if parents had their choice, they might take their child to a different school, right? But instead, they're taking their child to a specific school because they're told they have to go there. That's not a community, that's a guild. I don't know. I started thinking about how permaculture works and how forced communities work versus voluntary ones. The community that is my choir is great. They're everybody has their tiffs now and then, but they're basically supportive of one another, and they're unified by a shared interest, and it's a community. So, I don't know. It's not exactly a story from the holler, but it got me thinking. And with that, remember, if you like the show, you can support us while drinking a marvelous cup of hand-roasted coffee. That's right, the Holler Roast microbrewed coffee is up for sale on livingfreeintennessee.com. Just go there and click on coffee, and I will mail you a pound or two or whatever you want of our famous holler roast. If you want to drop me a question, topic idea, comment, feel free to email me at nicolesauce@gmail.com. And for those of you who prefer YouTube, we do put the show up over on the YouTube channel, as well as a few other videos of what we're doing here from time to time. And they will not let me do that vanity domain until I have 100 followers. I've got about 27 now, so would love to get another 90 of you, and I know you're out there, not 90, 70, to hit follow on the channel so that we can set that up. Anyway, with that, just go out there and make it a great week. Wait, are you wondering why I say that every week? Some people have asked me that question too. I say that because one time in my life I sat up and realized there was a bad situation going on, and I realized, you know what, I can either be upset about this bad situation or I can make it into a better situation. And I realized that most of my life I had been taking things on from a negative perspective and from a victim mentality. And it was like things were being done to me. And I realized I need to flip that around and make things happen for me. And so when I say make it a great week, I mean, it's up to you. It's in your control. Go out, make your week the best it is. Okay, now with that, really, guys, go out, make it a great week.
It's drowning in the light when